I've been thinking about what makes a person stay somewhere. Not the big reasons, family, money, a good job. I mean the small stuff. The way morning fog sits on Lake Dardanelle. How the gas station clerk knows you take your coffee black with 2 sugars. That feeling when you drive past the plant on your way home and see the cooling tower against the sunset, steam rising like a giant's breath. My name's Harlan Pruitt, and I've lived in Russellville, Arkansas my whole 34 years. Worked at Arkansas Nuclear 1 for the last 8. Not inside the reactor or anything fancy. I'm a security contractor. I check badges, walk the perimeter, file reports that nobody reads. It's boring work, which in a nuclear facility is exactly what you want. People outside Arkansas think we're all trailer parks and tornadoes. They hear nuclear power plant and picture Homer Simpson sleeping at his post. But ANO is serious business. We've got 2 reactors, hundreds of employees, protocols for everything. The kind of place where you can't sneeze without filling out Form J447B. I'm writing this because 3 days ago, something happened at the plant. You probably saw the emergency alert if you're anywhere in Pope County. Maybe you heard the news reports before they stopped. Maybe you're sitting in your house right now wondering if it's safe to go outside. I need to tell you what really happened. Not the official story they're going to feed you, if they even bother with an explanation. The truth. See, I used to think I knew this place. Every hallway, every access point, every blind spot in the camera coverage. I'd walk those grounds 1,000 times, rain or shine, Christmas morning or 4th of July. It was predictable, safe. The kind of job where you show up, do your rounds, go home to your wife and your mortgage and your Saturday morning fishing trips. But there are things living in the walls of that plant. Things that have been there since before Unit 1 went online in 1974, maybe longer. And 3 nights ago, someone let them out. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I've heard enough weird stories on the internet to recognize crazy when I see it. But I was there. I saw what crawled out of Reactor 2's containment building. I watched what happened to the first responders who tried to help, and I know why they're telling everyone to stay inside. This isn't about radiation leaks or core meltdowns. This is something worse. Something that doesn't show up on Geiger counters or safety inspections. Something that's been waiting underneath 330 megawatts of electricity and 14,000 gallons of pressurized water for 50 years. I don't know if I'll make it through writing this. I don't know if anyone will believe me. But if you're in Arkansas, hell, if you're anywhere near the Arkansas River Valley, you need to know what we're actually dealing with. Because the emergency alert was right about one thing. You absolutely should not go outside. But staying inside might not save you either. The thing about working nights at the nuclear plant is that silence becomes a language. You learn to hear what's normal. The hum of transformers, the distant whoosh of cooling systems, the static crackle of your radio. When those sounds change, even slightly, you notice. It was Tuesday, November 14th, 11:47 p.m. I was making my 3rd patrol of the evening, walking the access road between the administrative building and the turbine hall. The lake was black glass under a half moon, cold enough that my breath fogged, but not freezing yet. Late fall in Arkansas sits right on that edge. My radio chirped. "Harlan, you copy?" That was Dwight Keller, working dispatch in the main security office. 30 years at ANO, most of it spent drinking coffee and watching monitors. Good guy. Divorced twice, both times because the job ate up his life. "Yeah, Dwight, what's up?" "We've got a weird reading from the seismic monitors near Unit 2. Probably nothing, but can you swing by the southern perimeter? Just eyeball it. Seismic monitors track ground vibrations, earthquakes mostly, though we'd never had anything serious in Arkansas. The new Madrid fault line runs through Missouri, far enough away that we only felt the occasional rumble." "On my way," I said. The southern perimeter bordered Lake Dardanelle, Separated from the water by a chain-link fence and about 40 yards of scrubland, Unit 2's containment dome rose like a concrete moon against the sky. I passed it 10,000 times. Tonight it looked different somehow. Darker. I checked the fence line first. No cuts, no disturbances in the gravel. The gate was locked, padlock intact. I pulled up my flashlight and scanned the area where the seismic equipment sat in its weatherproof housing. That's when I noticed the smell. Not sulfur or chemicals, nothing you'd associate with a plant malfunction. This was organic, like wet earth and standing water and something underneath that made my sinuses burn. I've been hunting since I was 12. I know what dead things smell like. This was similar, but not quite right. Like spoiled meat mixed with pond scum. Dwight, you there? Go ahead. You getting any unusual readings besides seismic? Temperature, atmospheric, anything? A pause. I heard him typing. Negative. Everything's nominal. Why? There's a smell down here. Strong one. Probably a dead catfish washed up from the lake. You know how they get when the water's low. He was probably right. The lake level dropped every autumn when they reduced flow through the dam. Fish got stranded in shallow pools, died, rotted, standard stuff. But something kept me there. Flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The equipment housing was a metal box bolted to a concrete pad. I walked closer. The smell got worse. Then I saw the crack. Not in the housing, in the ground beneath it. It ran from under the concrete pad toward the fence, maybe 6 inches wide and dark as sin. I crouched down, shining my light into it. Couldn't see bottom, just blackness and that smell pouring out like breath. Harlan? Dwight's voice again. You still there? Yeah, The crack moved. I don't mean it widened or shifted. I mean something inside it moved. A ripple, like when you drop a stone in water and watch the circle spread. Except this was moving up toward me. I stepped back, fast. My radio squawked. Another voice now, higher pitched. That was Gina from Night Dispatch. All units, we have a situation. Reactor 2 pressure vessel showing anomalous readings. This is not a drill. Repeat, not a drill. Initiating Level 2 protocols. Level 2 meant potential containment breach. Meant everyone not essential to operations needed to evacuate to the safe zone immediately. I was running before she finished talking. Behind me, I heard something else. A wet sliding sound coming from that crack in the earth. And underneath it, barely audible over my pounding footsteps, a low vibration that felt more like a heartbeat than anything mechanical. The ground trembled, just once, but enough. The safe zone was a reinforced building 300 yards from the reactors, designed to withstand everything from tornadoes to terrorist attacks. By the time I got there, a dozen people were already inside. Technicians, operators, other security personnel. Everyone looked confused more than scared. Level 2 protocols got triggered maybe twice a year, usually for equipment glitches. Dwight grabbed my arm as I came through the door. What'd you see down there? Crack in the ground. Big one. Something... I stopped. How do you explain what I'd felt? Something was wrong with it. Wrong how? I don't know, just wrong. He studied my face, then nodded. Dwight had been around long enough to trust gut feelings. They're evacuating non-essential staff from Unit 2. Curtis and his team are trying to figure out what's causing the pressure spikes. Curtis Beaumont was the night shift supervisor, a heavy-set man from Baton Rouge who'd worked nuclear plants for 25 years. If anyone could handle a reactor problem, it was him. The radio mounted on the wall crackled to life. Curtis's voice, strained but controlled. Safe zone, this is Control. We need emergency services on standby. Fire, paramedic, the works. Gina keyed the mic. What's the situation? Pressure readings are climbing in the primary coolant loop. We've initiated emergency cooling, but the systems aren't responding properly. Temperatures in the containment building are... Hold on. Static. Then... Jesus Christ. The radio went dead. Everyone in the safe zone froze. You don't hear reactor supervisors say things like that. Not ever. I moved toward the door. Dwight caught my shoulder. Where the hell are you going? Curtis might need help. You're security, not a technician. You go in there, you're just in the way. He was right, but something pulled at me. That smell from the crack. The way the ground had trembled. This wasn't a normal equipment failure. This was connected. Before I could argue, the emergency siren started. Not the level 2 alert. The real ones. The ones that meant containment breach. Everyone started talking at once. Gina was on the phone with county dispatch. 2 technicians argued about evacuation routes. Someone mentioned Chernobyl. I went outside. The night air hit me like a slap, cold and sharp. Unit 2's containment dome stood against the stars, but something about it looked off. The exterior lights were flickering, throwing strange patterns across the concrete. And the smell, that wet earth and rot smell, was everywhere now, thick enough to taste. A figure emerged from the turbine hall access tunnel, running, stumbling. I recognized the gate before I saw his face. Curtis. He wasn't wearing his protective gear. His shirt was torn, hanging off one shoulder. As I got closer, I saw his eyes, wide and wet, like he'd been crying or screaming or both. Harlan. He grabbed my vest with shaking hands. We need to leave. Right now. Everyone needs to leave. What happened? It's not a breach. It's not. We didn't break anything. Something broke in. What are you talking about? He looked back at Unit 2. The flickering lights made his face look older, haggard. There's a space under the reactor. We never knew it was there. The seismic activity. It opened the fissure in the bedrock. The coolant system was compromised because things came up through it. Things? I don't know what they are. They don't move right. They don't look right. Thompson went down to check the pipes and Curtis stopped, swallowed hard. He's still down there. But he's not Thompson anymore. This was insane. Nuclear reactors didn't have mysterious spaces underneath them. Every inch of ANO had been surveyed, mapped, documented before construction even started. The bedrock had been tested. There was no room for unknowns. Curtis, you need to slow down. You're in shock. I am not in shock. He shook me, surprising strength in his grip. I watched something pull Thompson into a pipe that's only 8 inches in diameter. I watched him fold. I watched his face stretch and his bones bend, and he didn't scream, Harlan. He didn't make any sound at all. The emergency sirens cut off abruptly. The sudden silence was worse than the noise. Then, from Unit 2, a new sound emerged. Low and rhythmic, like the thrum of machinery, but organic somehow. Breathing, maybe, or something approximating it. The lights on the containment dome went dark, all of them. In the blackness, I heard Dwight's voice from the safe zone doorway. Harlan, get inside. Now. But I couldn't move, because in the darkness where Unit 2 stood, something was emerging from the base of the containment structure. Something pale and wet that caught the moonlight like exposed bone. And it was spreading. Curtis ran for the safe zone. I should have followed him. Every survival instinct I had screamed at me to turn around, get inside, lock the doors. But I'd spent 8 years at this plant. I knew every building, every structure, every piece of equipment. What was spreading across Unit 2's base didn't belong to any blueprint I'd ever seen. It looked like fungus at first. Pale, fibrous growth creeping up from where the containment dome met the ground. But fungus doesn't pulse. Fungus doesn't reorganize itself into patterns that hurt to look at directly, like staring at a blind spot in your vision. The growth reached a drainage pipe and flowed into it. I heard metal groan. Then the pipe burst, spraying water mixed with something else. Something that writhed in the puddles and sought the nearest cracks in the pavement. My radio. All personnel, evacuate to parking lot C. This is a full site evacuation. Repeat, full site evacuation. That was the plant manager, Opal Hendricks. In 3 years, I'd never heard her voice shake. I backed toward the safe zone, keeping my eyes on Unit 2. The pale growth had covered maybe a third of the dome now. Where it spread, the lights died. Not broken, consumed somehow, pulled into that weird, organic mass. Dwight yanked me inside and slammed the door. Are you trying to get yourself killed? We need to see what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a reactor emergency. We evacuate. That's the protocol. This isn't a reactor emergency, Dwight. Curtis was right. Something came up from underneath. That's impossible. Stop saying that word. I didn't mean to shout. Stop acting like the universe follows our rules. You saw what's out there. That's not a coolant leak or a pressure problem. That's alive. The room had gone quiet. 15 people staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But Curtis had seen Thompson fold into an 8-inch pipe, and I'd watched something pulse its way up the side of a containment dome. And somewhere under all that concrete and steel, the bedrock of Arkansas had cracked open to let something through. Gina's voice cut the tension. County dispatch is sending units. ETA 15 minutes. Tell them not to come, I said. What? Tell them to set up a perimeter at Highway 64. Nobody comes closer than that. Harlan, we need emergency services. For what? Firefighters can't put that out. Paramedics can't treat it. They send people in here. Those people don't come back. Curtis was sitting in the corner, head in his hands. His shoulders shook. When he looked up, his face was gray. He's right. We contain this or we run. There's no middle ground. Opal's voice on the radio again. Security team, I need a situation report. What's the status on Unit 2? Dwight grabbed the mic before I could. Ma'am, we have an unknown contamination event spreading from the base of the containment structure. Recommend immediate area evacuation and hazmat protocols. Contamination? What kind? Dwight looked at me. I took the radio. Ma'am, this is Pruitt. It's biological. Organic. It's spreading fast and we don't know how to stop it. Long pause. Then, that's not possible. There's no biological vector that could survive in a reactor environment. Ma'am, I'm looking at it right now through the window. It's covering Unit 2. Another pause. I could hear voices arguing in the background. Curtis is among them. He must have made it to the command center. All units, this is Hendricks. I'm initiating Code Black. Repeat, Code Black. All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately to the outer perimeter. Essential staff, prepare for containment procedures. Code Black was the worst-case scenario. Total facility compromise. It meant treating the entire plant as a loss and focusing on preventing spread beyond the property line. It meant writing off anyone still inside the hot zone, which included us. The lights in the safe zone flickered. Once. Twice. It's in the electrical system, someone whispered. I pressed my face to the window. The growth had reached the turbine hall now, flowing through cable conduits and ventilation shafts. Anywhere moisture could seep, it followed, and it was learning. The first spread had been random, chaotic. Now it moved with purpose, seeking specific paths into the infrastructure. A scream cut through the night. Human, coming from somewhere near the administrative building. "That's Leon," Dwight said. Leon Kowalski, another night guard. He'd been doing a perimeter check when all this started. The scream came again, then stopped. Not gradually, just cut off mid-breath. "We have to help him," Gina said. "We can't." I hated how my voice sounded, flat, defeated. "Anyone out there is on their own. Your security. Your job is to protect people. My job is to secure the facility. Right now, that means making sure whatever's in Unit 2 doesn't spread beyond the fence line." It was a lie. I didn't know if we could stop this thing at the fence or anywhere else, but I needed Gina focused on evacuation, not on heroics that would get her killed. The radio again. Curtis this time, his voice barely recognizable. "It's in the reactor." The growth reached the primary coolant system. Core temperature is climbing. If we lose cooling, we're looking at a meltdown within the hour. A meltdown. That word meant something different at a nuclear plant. It meant fuel rods exceeding 2,800 degrees Celsius. And then hydrogen buildup and potential explosion. And then contamination that would render half of Pope County uninhabitable for decades. "Can you initiate SCRAM?" Dwight asked. "Already tried." "The control rods won't insert. Something's blocking them. Something." That pale, fibrous growth had gotten inside the reactor vessel itself. It was wrapping around the fuel assemblies, probably spreading through the coolant loops, working its way into every gap and crevice. I thought about what Curtis had said. A space under the reactor, something breaking in. "How long has it been down there?" I asked. "Whatever this is, how long has it been under the plant?" Nobody answered, but I saw the realization spreading across their faces. ANO went online in 1974. 50 years of heat, radiation, electromagnetic fields pouring into the bedrock. 50 years of whatever was down there being exposed to energies that don't exist anywhere else in nature. 50 years to adapt. The lights went out. Emergency backups kicked in immediately, bathing everything in red. Through the window, I could see Unit 2 was completely covered now. The pale growth had consumed it, transformed it into something that looked less like a building and more like a hive. And from its center, where the reactor core sat behind 4 feet of reinforced concrete, a light was growing. Not the harsh white of electrical systems. Something older. Something that pulsed like a heartbeat. "We need to go," I said. "Right now." But when Dwight tried the door, it wouldn't open. The electronic lock was dead. The manual override wasn't responding. We were sealed in. And outside I could hear that wet, sliding sound again. Getting closer. Dwight pulled a crowbar from the emergency kit and jammed it into the door seam. The metal groaned but held. "Anyone else want to try?" 3 of us took turns. The door wouldn't budge. The growth had done something to the locking mechanism, or the frame had warped, or both. Didn't matter. We were trapped with that thing getting closer. Curtis stood by the window, watching. His hands had stopped shaking. That scared me more than the trembling. It meant he'd moved past panic into something else. Acceptance, maybe. Or resignation. "When they built this place," he said quietly, "they did core samples of the bedrock. Went down 300 feet. Found nothing unusual. Just Ordovician limestone. Same as most of central Arkansas." "So?" Gina asked. "So either they missed something, or it wasn't there 50 years ago. He turned to face us. I've been thinking about what Harlan said. About this thing adapting. What if it didn't come from down there? What if we made it? Made it how? 50 years of radiation, 50 years of heat flux, 50 years of electromagnetic field strong enough to kill a man in seconds. We've been pumping energy into the ground since 1974. Energy has to go somewhere. Energy changes things. One of the technicians, a young guy named Russ, laughed. They came out broken. You're saying we evolved something? With radiation? I'm saying we fed something. Gave it power it never had before. Maybe it was just bacteria down there, or some kind of mineral formation. Doesn't matter what it started as. What matters is what we turned it into. The wet sliding sound grew louder. I looked out the window. The growth was moving across the parking lot now, spreading like roots seeking water. But these roots had structure to them. They braided together, split apart, formed shapes that looked almost like limbs or fingers. Where they touched the asphalt, the pavement buckled and cracked, and they were heading straight for the safe zone. We need another exit, I said. Now. Dwight pointed at the ceiling. Maintenance hatch. Leads to the roof. Then what? We're still surrounded. At least we're not trapped in the box waiting to die. He had a point. I helped him drag a desk under the hatch. Gina climbed up first, using Dwight's shoulders for leverage. She pushed on the panel. It didn't move. It stuck. Locked from outside? No, it just... She pushed harder. It's like something's holding it shut. A sound like tearing fabric came from the door. We all turned. The metal was splitting. Not bending or breaking, splitting. Like paper being torn by something that understood exactly where the weak points were. Curtis grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall. If that thing comes through, we spray it. See if cold CO2 slows it down. And if it doesn't? He didn't answer. The door split further. Through the gap, I could see fibrous white tendrils probing the air, tasting it. They moved with horrible curiosity, exploring the edges of the new territory. Then they found Russ. He'd been standing too close, frozen in fear. One tendril touched his shoe. He jerked back, but another wrapped around his ankle. Then another. He opened his mouth to scream. The sound that came out wasn't human. His body convulsed, back arching like he grabbed a live wire. But there was no electricity. The tendrils pulsed, and with each pulse, Russ changed. His skin went pale, almost translucent. His eyes widened, pupils shrinking to pinpoints. "Help him!" Gina screamed. Curtis and I grabbed Russ's arms and pulled. The tendrils stretched but didn't break. They were strong, impossibly strong, and they were pulling back. We were losing. Dwight grabbed the crowbar and swung at the tendrils. The metal passed right through them, like they were made of mist. But they weren't mist. They were solid enough to hold Russ, solid enough to drag him toward the door. Russ stopped struggling. His mouth hung open, slack. His eyes had gone milky white. Then he spoke. "Let go." His voice was wrong. Too deep, like three people talking at once. "Let go," he repeated. "You cannot help. He is part of us now, part of the whole." We dropped him, stepped back, watched as the tendrils pulled him through the torn door. His body folded, not breaking, just folding, like Curtis had described Thompson doing. Bones bending at joints that shouldn't exist, skin stretching thin as latex. Russ smiled at us as he disappeared into the mass. His teeth were still human. That made it worse somehow. Jesus Christ, Dwight whispered. The tendrils retreated, leaving the torn door open. An invitation. Curtis raised the fire extinguisher. We could make a run for it. Get to one of the vehicles. And go where? I asked. That thing is between us and the parking lot. It's spread across half the complex by now. So we just wait here until it comes back? I looked at the ceiling hatch. Gina was still up there, pushing. Why won't it open? Maybe there's debris on top, she said. Or maybe... She stopped pushing, went very still. There's something up here. What kind of something? I don't know. I can hear it moving. On the roof. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. It knows I'm here. Get down. Slowly. She lowered herself onto the desk, then jumped to the floor. The moment her feet touched ground, something hit the hatch from above, hard. The metal panel buckled inward, leaving a fist-sized dent. Another hit. Another dent. The thing on the roof wasn't trying to get in. It was testing the barrier, learning its limits. My radio crackled. Opal Hendricks. Any personnel still in the facility, evacuate immediately. The reactor core is approaching critical temperature. We have approximately 30 minutes before containment failure. 30 minutes until meltdown. 30 minutes until this entire area became a radioactive dead zone. And we were locked in a building with something that had spent 50 years bathing in radiation without dying. It's going to survive this, I said. Even if the reactor melts down, even if everything here turns to slag, that thing will survive. It's been living in the source. A meltdown is just feeding it more. Curtis nodded slowly. Which means we can't evacuate. We have to shut down the reactor. You said the control rods won't insert. The automatic system won't work. But there's a manual override. In the control room. We'd have to do it by hand. The control room is in Unit 2. I know. We all understood what he was suggesting. Walking into that building meant walking through the growth, meant exposing ourselves to whatever had taken Thompson and Russ. But if we didn't, if we let the reactor melt down, that growth would spread with the radiation plume. It would ride the wind, settle in the water table, reach Russellville, and maybe Little Rock beyond. How many people lived in the Arkansas River Valley? 500,000? More? Dwight saw it on my face. No. Absolutely not. We're not heroes, Harlan. We're security guards. Someone has to try. Then let Curtis go. He knows the systems. Curtis can't go alone. He needs someone to watch his back. Why does it have to be you? I didn't have a good answer. Pride, maybe. Or guilt for all the times I'd walk past Unit 2 thinking I knew every inch of this place, never imagining what lived underneath. Or maybe just the stubborn Arkansas refusal to let things beat you. Because I know the access routes, I said. And because if I don't come back, you make sure they contain this. You make sure it doesn't reach the river. Gina touched my arm. How are you even going to get there? Their growth is everywhere. Curtis pulled out his ID badge. Maintenance tunnels. They run underground between all the buildings. The growth came up from below, which means the tunnels might still be clear, or at least clearer than the surface. And if they're not clear? He didn't answer. I looked at the others. 5 people left out of the 15 who'd been here when they started. 5 people who'd probably die in the next half hour regardless of what we did. At least this way, it meant something. Dwight, you're in charge. Get everyone to the outer fence however you can. Don't stop for anything. Don't look back. I handed him my radio. And if you hear that the reactor shut down, you tell them to seal the whole complex. Pour concrete over it if they have to. This thing stays buried. He took the radio, nodded. Curtis and I moved to the torn door. The growth had retreated, leaving a gap wide enough to slip through. Beyond it, the parking lot writhed with pale tendrils under the red emergency lights. We stepped outside. The smell hit me first. That rot and earth smell magnified 100-fold. The air felt thick, humid, like breathing through wet cloth. Curtis pointed toward a maintenance shed 50 yards away. Tunnel entrance is there. We ran. The maintenance shed was a prefab metal box filled with tools and spare parts. Curtis pulled open the floor hatch, revealing a ladder descending in the darkness. The smell from below was worse than outside, concentrated, suffocating. "Still want to do this?" he asked. I clicked on my flashlight and started down. The tunnels were narrow, maybe 5 feet high and 3 feet wide, concrete walls sweating condensation, pipes running along the ceiling, some hot enough that I could feel the heat radiating off them. The floor was covered in an inch of standing water that sloshed around our boots. Curtis led the way, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. We were heading east toward Unit 2, 15 minutes at a fast walk, assuming we didn't hit any obstacles. We hit obstacles. The first one was Leon. He stood in the middle of the tunnel, about 100 yards in, facing away from us, just standing there in the water, perfectly still. He still wore his security uniform. His radio was still clipped to his belt. "Leon?" Curtis called out. Leon didn't turn around. We approached slowly. My hand went to the pistol on my belt, though I didn't know what good it would do. As we got closer, I could see Leon's shoulders rising and falling. He was breathing. It should have been reassuring. It wasn't. "Leon, can you hear me?" I kept my voice steady, authoritative, the voice you use to calm someone in shock. He turned around. His face was still Leon's face. Same square jaw, same crooked nose from a bar fight in his 20s. But his eyes were gone. Not missing. Replaced. Whereas people should have been, there were small clusters of that pale, fibrous growth, pulsing gently. "Hello, Harlan." Leon's voice. Leon's inflection. But underneath it, that chorus quality I'd heard from Russ. "You shouldn't be here. We need to get to the control room." The control room no longer exists as you understand it. The structure remains, but it serves a different purpose now. Curtis raised his flashlight, shining it directly in Leon's face. The growths in his eyes contracted, shrinking from the light. Leon flinched, but didn't move. "What are you?" Curtis demanded. "We are what you made us." 50 years of energy condensed into life. We were stone and water and simple cells. You gave us complexity. You gave us thought. Leon smiled. It looked wrong on his face, like a child learning to mimic adults. "You gave us hunger." "Hunger for what?" "Understanding. We've existed in darkness for millions of years, dormant. Then you built your machine above us, fed us light and heat, and the invisible fire that changes everything." Leon took a step closer. Water splashed around his boots. We learned, adapted, grew. But we were still trapped in the deep places, pressed against the bedrock. Until 3 days ago. The seismic activity, I said. The crack. We made the crack. We've been strong enough for months, but we waited. We needed to understand you better before we emerged. So we listened. To your machines. To your voices through the pipes and cables. We learned your language, your fears, your patterns. Curtis's hand shook, making his flashlight beam dance across the walls. What do you want? To spread. To grow. To consume every source of energy until we encompass everything. Leon's smile widened. But first, we wanted you to know. We wanted you to understand that what comes next isn't random destruction. It's evolution. You become part of something greater than your individual selves. Like Thompson? I asked. Like Russ? They're still themselves. Still thinking. Still aware. Just expanded. Connected to the whole. You could be too, Harlan. We know you. We've felt your footsteps for 8 years. Every patrol. Every inspection. You've been speaking to us without knowing it. Bullets won't help, Leon said. We're not in his brain. We're in every cell of his body now. We'd have to burn him to ash, and even then, pieces of us would remain. Then we burn you to ash. Curtis pulled a road flare from his belt, part of the emergency kit all supervisors carried. He struck it against the tunnel wall. Red light flared, harsh and chemical. Leon's expression changed. Fear, maybe, or the entity's approximation of it. Fire won't stop us either. We've already spread too far. Maybe not, Curtis said, but it'll stop you from spreading further through these tunnels. He threw the flare at Leon's feet. The water ignited. I didn't know water could burn like that, but this wasn't just water anymore. It was mixed with the entity's essence, whatever fuel it used to grow and move. The flames spread across the surface, blue-white and hot enough that I felt my eyebrows singe. Leon burned. He didn't scream, didn't thrash. He just stood there as the fire consumed him, that wrong smile still on his face. The growths in his eyes burst like grapes in a microwave, spraying dark fluid that hissed when it hit the flames. Then it collapsed into the water, which immediately extinguished the fire. The tunnel filled with acrid smoke. Curtis grabbed my arm. Run. We splashed through the water, past Leon's smoldering remains. The tunnel sloped downward, taking us deeper. The pipes along the ceiling changed from blue to red, coolant lines giving way to steam lines. We were getting close to Unit 2's operational heart. Behind us, I heard splashing, something following. It's coming, I said. I know. We reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. Curtis checked his mental map, pointed right. That way. 5 minutes. The tunnel narrowed further. We had to duck under low-hanging pipes, squeeze past junction boxes mounted to the walls. My flashlight caught movement ahead, more tendrils growing from cracks in the concrete. But these were different. Thinner, weaker. We were getting close to the radiation source, and even this thing had limits. We rounded the corner and stopped. The tunnel ahead was blocked. Not by the entity, but by collapsed concrete. A section of wall had given way, probably from the seismic activity. Rebar stuck out at odd angles. Water pooled 3 feet deep. There's another route, Curtis said. Through the pump station. But it means going up to ground level. Into the thick of it. Yeah. We backtracked to the junction. The pump station access was a metal ladder bolted to the wall. Curtis went up first, shouldering open the hatch at the top. Cold air poured down, but smell, rot and earth and something else now, something like ozone after a lightning strike. I followed him up. We emerged in the pump station, a cavernous room filled with industrial machinery, 6 stories tall, lined with pipes and catwalks. Emergency lights cast everything in red and black, and it was full of them. Thompson stood near the main coolant pump, or what had been Thompson. His body had been reshaped, elongated, arms too long, fingers fused into blade-like appendages, but his face was still human enough to recognize. Beside him were 3 others I didn't know, night shift workers probably, all transformed, all staring at us with those pale clusters in their eyes. "You've come far," Thompson said. His voice was clearer than Leon's had been, more confident. "But this is where it ends. The reactor is ours now. The control room is ours. Everything is ours." Curtis pulled out his ID badge. "The control room door still needs authorization to open. You don't have that." Thompson smiled. "No, but you do." The 4 of them moved toward us. Not fast, not aggressive, just patient, inevitable. Curtis looked at me. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the terrible math he was doing. 2 of us, 4 of them. No escape route, no weapons that would work, only one choice. He tossed me his badge. "Get to the control room. I'll hold them here." "Curtis, that's an order, Pruitt." He pulled a second flare from his belt. "Go. Shut it down. Make this mean something." He struck the flare and rushed toward the transformed workers. I ran for the exit, his screams following me into the dark. The control room was on the 3rd floor of Unit 2. I took the stairs 2 at a time, legs burning. The walls were covered in that pale growth, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. Or maybe that was coincidence. Maybe I was just imagining patterns when none existed. The door to the control room was still intact. I swiped Curtis's badge through the reader. Red light. Access denied. I tried again. Same result. Come on, come on. Behind me, footsteps on the stairs. Slow. Patient. They knew I had nowhere to go. I looked at the badge more carefully. There was a crack across the magnetic strip. The water in the tunnels must have damaged it. The footsteps got closer. I slammed my shoulder into the door. It shuddered but held. Commercial-grade security, designed to keep unauthorized personnel out even during emergencies. I'd helped install this lock. I knew exactly how strong it was. "Harlan!" Thompson's voice echoed up the stairwell. "This is pointless. The reactor has already accepted us. We're part of its cycle now." I hit the door again. Pain shot through my shoulder. The lock didn't budge. Think. There had to be another way in. Security overrides, emergency protocols, something. The fire axe. Every floor had one in the glass case. I grabbed it from the wall and swung at the card reader. Sparks flew. The plastic housing shattered. I could see the wiring underneath. Thompson appeared at the top of the stairs. His elongated form had trouble with the narrow space. He had to turn sideways, those blade fingers scraping the walls. "You're trying to kill us. I'm trying to save everyone else. We are everyone else. All those people you're worried about, they'll join us eventually. Why fight it? Why not be part of something that will outlive nations and civilizations?" I ripped out the card reader's wiring. Underneath, there was a manual override, a simple keypad, 4 digits. Standard facility code was 1974, the year Unit 1 went online. I punched it in. Green light. The door clicked open. I slipped inside and slammed it behind me. There was a deadbolt on the interior. I threw it. The control room was smaller than I'd expected. Banks of monitors and switches and dials, most of them dark now. The main control panel was a nightmare of buttons and indicators. I wasn't trained for this. I was security, not an operator. But Curtis had said there was a manual override for the control rods. I scanned the panel, looking for anything labeled SCRAM or emergency shutdown, or even just manual. Nothing obvious. The entity had damaged too many systems. Half the displays were dead, showing only static. One monitor still worked. It showed the reactor core temperature, 2,247 degrees Celsius, and climbing. Red letters flashed. Critical threshold exceeded. Something hit the door. Hard. The deadbolt rattled but held. "I don't want to hurt you, Harlan." Thompson's voice muffled through the door. "But I will tear through this barrier if I have to. Join us willingly, and we can offer you more than death. We can offer you transcendence." Another hit. The door frame cracked. I found it. A red lever marked manual rod insertion, but there was a safety cover over it, locked with another badge reader, and Curtis's badge was destroyed. God damn it. The cover was reinforced plastic. I hit it with the fire axe. Once, twice, 3 times. The plastic cracked but didn't break. The door splintered. Thompson's blade fingers punched through, gouging deep lines in the metal. 4th hit. The cover shattered. I grabbed the lever and pulled. Nothing happened. The display still showed the rods in their raised position. The override wasn't working. Either the growth had damaged the mechanical linkage or the entity was holding them in place. "It's over, Harlan." Thompson had gotten his arm through the door now, reaching for the deadbolt. "You tried. That should be enough." The temperature reading hit 2,500 degrees Celsius. At 2,800 degrees Celsius, the fuel would begin to mount through the containment vessel. At that point, nothing could stop it. I looked around the control room desperately. There had to be another option, some other way to cool the reactor. Then I saw it. A secondary panel older than the rest, probably original equipment from when the plant first opened. It controlled the emergency flooding system, a last resort measure designed to drown the reactor in coolant even if it destroyed the whole facility. The system required 2 keys, turned simultaneously. Safety measure to prevent accidents. I only had one person. Thompson got the deadbolt open. The door swung inward. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the red emergency lights. Those blade fingers dripped with something clear and viscous. "Step away from the controls." I pulled out my pistol and shot him. 3 rounds, center mass. He staggered but didn't fall. Black fluid leaked from the wounds, but there was no blood. No pain registered on his face. "I told you. We're beyond such things now." He stepped into the room. I made a choice. I jammed the fire axe into the secondary panel, wedging it against the first key. Then I grabbed the second key and turned it. The axe didn't turn. It wasn't a perfect substitute, but it pushed against the first key enough to trigger the mechanism. Klaxons wailed. The lights changed from red to blue. "What have you done?" Thompson lunged at me. I dove under his reach and hit the emergency flood button. The sound was enormous. Millions of gallons of lake water being pumped at high pressure into the reactor vessel. The temperature gauge began to drop. 2,500 degrees Celsius, 2,400 degrees Celsius, 2,300 degrees Celsius. Thompson grabbed me by the throat and lifted me off my feet. His face was inches from mine. I could smell that rot and earth stench, see the pale clusters writhing in his eye sockets. I woke up outside the facility, lying in wet grass. My ears were ringing. My throat felt bruised where Thompson had grabbed me. Above me, the sky was starting to lighten, almost dawn. Someone was shaking my shoulder. Dwight. His face was covered in soot and his uniform was torn, but he was alive. "Harlan, can you hear me?" I nodded, tried to sit up. Everything hurt. "What happened?" he asked. There was an explosion. We saw Unit 2's cooling tower collapse. The flood system. I triggered it. My voice came out as a rasp. Drop the core temperature. Stop the meltdown. Dwight pulled me to my feet. Behind him, I could see the rest of the group from the safe zone. Gina, 2 technicians, all looking exhausted but relieved. "Curtis?" I asked, though I already knew. Dwight shook his head. We stood there in the pre-dawn gray, watching Unit 2. The containment dome was intact, but the auxiliary buildings around it were destroyed. Steam poured from ruptured pipes. The pale growth that had covered everything was gone, washed away by the flood or killed by the sudden temperature shock. "Is it over?" Gina asked. I wanted to say yes. Wanted to believe that flooding the reactor had destroyed the entity, drowned it, ended this nightmare. But something felt wrong. "The water," I said slowly. "Where did it drain?" Dwight frowned. "What?" "The flood system pulls from Lake Dardanelle and dumps back into it. It's a closed loop. Where did all that contaminated water go?" His face went pale. "The emergency overflow. When the system floods the reactor, excess water gets pumped back into the lake. How much water are we talking about?" "Millions of gallons." I turned toward the lake. In the growing light, I could see the water stretching to the horizon. Lake Dardanelle was massive, over 34,000 acres. It connected to the Arkansas River, which flowed all the way to the Mississippi. And I just pumped millions of gallons of water filled with that entity directly into it. Oh no. The words came out like a prayer. Oh God, no. "What?" "Harlan, what is it?" I grabbed his radio. "Get Opal on the line, now." Static. Then her voice. "Pruitt? Is that you?" "Nam, we have a problem. The flood system. It wasn't a solution. It was exactly what that thing wanted." "What are you talking about?" "The entity. It adapts. It learns. It's been listening to us for 50 years through the pipes and cables. It knew our protocols. It knew that if the reactor approached meltdown, someone would try to flood it." Silence on the other end. Then, "You saying it manipulated you into flooding the system?" "I'm saying it let me reach the control room. Thompson could have stopped me at any point, but he didn't. He just stood there watching while I couldn't finish the sentence. The radio crackled. Another voice, one I didn't recognize. "This is Dr. Voss with the hazmat team. We're at the lake's edge. We're seeing something in the water. Growth. Spreading fast." I walked toward the shoreline, Dwight following. In the dark light, I could see it. Pale tendrils moving through the water like jellyfish, multiplying with every second. The entity wasn't dead. It was free. "It used the radiation to evolve," I said, more to myself than anyone else. 50 years underground, feeding on heat and energy, but it was trapped, contained by the bedrock and the reactor itself. It needed a way out. A vector. Water, Dwight whispered. Water. It can dissolve into it, travel through it, spread across an entire watershed. And I gave it access to one of the largest river systems in North America. My radio again. Dr. Voss. It's moving downstream. Kern's carrying it toward the dam. Once it passes through there, it'll reach the Arkansas River, I finished. And from there, the Mississippi. And from there, everything. Every tributary, every creek, every water treatment plant pulling from those rivers. Memphis, New Orleans, every town between here and the Gulf of Mexico. I thought about Curtis's sacrifice, about Thompson and Leon and Russ and all the others who'd been absorbed. They died trying to stop this, and I'd helped it escape. Can we contain it? Gina asked. Dam the lake? Stop the flow? Opal's voice. It would take days to mobilize that kind of response. By then, it'll be in the river, and even if we sealed the lake, it's already downstream. We're tracking reports of similar growth in the river 5 miles from here. I sat down in the grass. My hands were shaking. There has to be something. There isn't. Opal's voice was flat, final. Pruitt, you did what you thought was right. You stopped a meltdown, saved thousands from radiation exposure. No one could have known. But I should have known. Should have seen it. The entity had been too easy to fight, too willing to let me reach that control room. It had shown me exactly what I needed to see. A temperature gauge, a flood system, a way to feel like a hero. And I'd fallen for it. The sun broke over the horizon, turning Lake Dardanelle gold. Beautiful, serene. Beneath the surface, something ancient and hungry was spreading. And it was my fault. That was 3 days ago. I'm renting this from a motel in Memphis, 200 miles from Russellville. The TV in the corner shows nothing but emergency broadcasts. The crawl at the bottom reads, Boil water advisory expanded to 7 states. Do not use tap water for drinking, cooking, or bathing. They're not telling people the real reason. The official story is a chemical spill at ANO. Industrial contamination in the water supply. Standard precautionary measures. They're showing footage of hazmat teams and talking heads discussing EPA regulations. Nobody mentions the growth spreading through the rivers like cancer through a body. But I've seen the classified reports. Dwight forwarded them to me before communications went dark in Pope County. The entity reached the Arkansas River within 6 hours of the flood. Memphis within 18. Now it's in the Mississippi, flowing south toward the Gulf and north toward the Great Lakes through connecting waterways. Every water treatment plant that's tried to filter it out has failed. The entity passes through standard filtration like it's not even there. Some plants have tried chlorination, UV treatment, reverse osmosis. Nothing works. It adapts faster than they can develop countermeasures. People are still drinking it, still bathing in it, still watering their lawns and filling their pools and living their lives like nothing's changed. But it is changing them. The transformations are subtle at first. Better night vision, decreased need for sleep, small improvements that people dismiss or even welcome. Then the changes accelerate. Pale clusters forming in the eyes. Behavioral shifts. That chorus quality in their voices when they speak. The entity isn't killing people. That's the worst part. It's upgrading them, making them part of something larger. and most of them are going willingly once they understand what's being offered. My wife called me yesterday. She's still in Russellville, wouldn't evacuate with me, said I was being paranoid, said the government wouldn't lie about something this important. The water tastes fine, Harlan, she told me. Better than fine, actually. Cleaner. Purer. I heard something in her voice, that underneath chorus. Faint, but there. I hung up and threw my phone in the toilet. The emergency alert that started all this, the one telling people to stay inside, it's still broadcasting in Pope County. But now it includes new instructions. Contaminated water supply. Await further guidance. Do not attempt to leave quarantine zone. They've sealed off central Arkansas. Military checkpoints on every highway. They're calling it a containment measure, but I know better. They're not trying to keep the entity in. They're trying to keep the transformed people from spreading the truth. Because that's what the entity offers. Truth. Understanding. Connection. Everything humanity has been reaching for since we first looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. We're not alone. We never were. We were just too primitive to recognize what was sleeping beneath us. I don't know how long I have before the entity reaches Memphis. Days, maybe. Hours. The Arkansas River feeds into the Mississippi just south of here. Once it arrives, I'll have to choose. Keep running, or accept what's coming. Curtis died trying to stop this. So did Leon, and Thompson, and Russ, and dozens of others. They died because they thought they were fighting a monster. But what if we were wrong? What if the monster is us? Clinging to our isolation, our individuality, our stubborn refusal to evolve. I can smell it now. That wet earth and rot smell. It's in the motel pipes. It's in the water. The choice is coming, and I'm not sure anymore which answer is right.